Good evening to all of you. You know, it's amazing. All you have to do is say good evening and everyone gets quiet. It's of course a great pleasure to welcome all of you this evening. You know, there are 600 of you here this evening, and some of you may have experienced what I'm told is the first time pleasure of lining up around the block to get in and check your coat. We appreciate your patience at that moment, but it's really, first, it's amazing for us, it's affirming for us, it's vitalizing for us to have this kind of response. So before I say anything else, I just want to thank all of you on behalf of all of us in the museum for being so enthusiastic and for embracing us in this way. It really means a huge amount to us. I do know many of you, so you know that I've been here almost a year and a half, having arrived right after October 7 in 2023. There was a lot to absorb at that moment, and for me, paramount was to think about how our schedule of exhibitions already scheduled to roll out wouldn't be tone deaf to the times and would be able to be responsive to and resonant with the challenges of the times. And you know, in this almost year and a half, those times have become in no way less challenging. Many of you, I hope all of you, have already been to our exhibition downstairs of Trenton Doyle Hancock in visual dialogue with Philip Guston, an exhibition which is all about confronting racism with humor. At least that's what the New York Times said on the front page of the New York Times, as part of the 3-page spread that started with the front page of the arts section. And that, too, could not have been more in tune with the complexities of the times that we're in. And this exhibition, The Book of Esther in the Age of Rembrandt, is exactly to that same point. I think some of you have been through the exhibition. All of you will come back to see it when it's less crowded. You know that it's about, you know the biblical story of Esther in ancient Persia after the destruction of the first temple, and how she demonstrated courage and heroism following her uncle's directive to disarm a madman's plan to destroy her people. And she was able then also to infuse her king with heroic stature. They were a quartet of voices, Ahasuerus, Haman, Mordecai, Esther. And look what came from the chorus of the 4 of them together. Would that we could do such a thing today and magically accomplish a change in the times that we're in. For us, that story is exemplary of how in the receptive and responsive time of the 17th century in Holland, just coming out from Spanish rule, Dutch culture embraced Esther as an icon for the kind of courage, heroism, democratic spirit that would nurture Holland's flowering on the global political landscape in the long period thereafter. Those of you who get emails from me know that I often say W-H-E-W. I don't know how to pronounce it. I think it's whew. And that is what a story like that means. So this exhibition is exactly illustrative of that narrative. 120 works of art are here: paintings, works on paper, decorative arts, manuscripts, Esther scrolls. It's a kind of symphony of creative making across all of the arts that were practiced in Holland at that time, and all at the powerful intersection of the notion of the Bible, of history, of politics, of diplomacy at that moment in the history of Holland, connecting to the narrative of Esther from the Bible. This exhibition has loans from 35 museums and 10 private collections from across the US, Canada, the UK, Europe, into Eastern Europe, into Poland. And you know, this exhibition was already on the books when I arrived. We were in the process of requesting loans and receiving approval for that remarkable list of loans from so many sources. And of course, after October 7, we had our concern about the commitment of lenders to stay with us, and exactly the opposite happened, demonstrating exactly the power of collegiality and engagement as a brighter path forward. This was something very encouraging for us then. We continue to have this experience today, and I can say that with pride. And in this regard, with respect to this project, I do also want to give special thanks to our colleagues at the North Carolina Museum of Art and the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum, both of which are lenders, collaborative partners for the exhibition, and the exhibition will travel to those two venues after it leaves us here in New York. Adding to those thanks, of course, I want to thank all of our lenders. Many are here this evening, and you all don't know how appreciative we are of the resonance among the works that have come here from so many venues. I also want to thank all of the donors who've made this exhibition possible, our lead sponsor, the Jerome L. Green Foundation, our major sponsors, Denise Littlefield Sobel and the Leon Levy Foundation, and many others. We did also receive critical support from the Consulate General of the Netherlands in New York. It's not easy for consulates to give support out in the world. You're going to hear from the Consul General shortly, but the consulate here in New York really reached out. You're going to hear from Ahmed Dadou, who's the Consul General, who is here with us. It's not easy to make the kind of commitment that the consulate here did for us, and this is something with special meaning. Also, of course, I do want to thank our board and our board leadership, our chair emeritus, Robert Pruzan, our chair, Shari Aronson, our co-presidents, Sander Levy and David Shapiro, all of whom are here with us this evening. We could not do what we do without the commitment of, and support of our board, and we are hugely appreciative for that as well. So what I want to do now is introduce Abigail Rapoport, our curator of Judaica, who arrived here 5 years ago already with the vision of this project in mind. We are realizing it today. There could not be a better moment to present an exhibition like this and with this message. It's pretty remarkable. Many of you know Abigail. She's amazing. The show is stunning. Its scope is remarkable. And much of this, if not all of it, is due to Abigail. So, Abigail.
I'm going to lower this just a bit, although James and I often talk about how we're pretty similar in height. Wow, it is really amazing to see all of you here this evening for our opening of the Book of Esther in the Age of Rembrandt. We'll travel back in time a little bit. When I first encountered art history, to me there was this glaring gap. What felt missing was the art of Jewish culture. The kind of canon of Western art history celebrated works like Caravaggio's paintings, but those Torah crowns, the Torah finials with Baroque flowers that I grew up seeing in synagogues and Jewish museums seemed to contain so much of the inspiration as Caravaggio's paintings, yet were missing from my textbooks. It is exactly this gap that the Jewish Museum collection and exhibitions have worked valiantly for decades to fill and illustrate. My hope is that the Book of Esther in the Age of Rembrandt, which is my first exhibition at the Jewish Museum and 5 years in the making, joins that lineage. This exhibition brings together works by Rembrandt and his contemporaries with Jewish ceremonial art to show how the biblical story of Queen Esther shared inspiration for so much of the art and culture of the 17th century Netherlands. Queen Esther was their icon. You can even say she was their star. As many of you know, the story recounts how the heroic queen risked her life to save the Jewish people of ancient Persia from near annihilation. Esther's story is commemorated annually on the holiday Purim and are read aloud from an Esther scroll. For the Portuguese Jewish community, Esther was not unlike their own ancestors and families, forced to hide their Jewish identity for fear of being persecuted. Esther was a symbol of hope and inspiration. For the Dutch at the same time, Queen Esther was a courageous model of virtue, a beautiful one too, and a symbol of bravery for the people of Amsterdam. This was in their fight against the Spanish monarchy, the most powerful one at the time. So walk around the exhibition and you'll see great artists of Rembrandt's time, inspired by Queen Esther's heroism. You'll see royal queens and princesses having their portraits posing as Queen Esther. Images of Esther found their way into everyday household objects. Her story was acted on stage and illustrated in beautiful Esther scrolls. Many of these works are influenced by Rembrandt's innovative visual style, which is his magical ability to capture human expression through light, shadow, and texture. And this all made Esther highly accessible to her audience. You'll also encounter ceremonial objects from that time, which are still used today in Amsterdam's Portuguese synagogue, like the stunning red velvet lectern cover. For the first time since their creation, 300 years ago, they are all displayed together here. In line with our mission, we designed this exhibition to elevate Jewish ceremonial art by bringing our magnificent objects into conversation with fine art by Rembrandt and other great artists of his time. For example, our Esther scroll by Natalia is, in my opinion, no less intricate than Rembrandt's Jewish bride print. During the run of this exhibition, you'll enjoy these pieces side by side in the Kaplan Gallery of the Jewish Museum in New York. Of course, bringing this to life in the galleries started first and foremost with James Snyder, the visionary leadership of James, who has been a staunch supporter of this exhibition from literally the moment he stepped foot into the Jewish Museum a year and 4 months and 4 days ago, and I hope that I got that right. During installation, James literally walked through every single day. His sincere investment in the mission is palpable. With me from one of the first COVID-era Zoom meetings where I pitched this exhibition topic through the installation of our very last shipment from Amsterdam, which was this morning, was our chief curator, Darcy Alexander. Darcy has provided leadership, perspective, and guidance for 5 years in this exhibition's making. Thank you to the talented exhibition design team for the creative vision of Salmanoff Architecture Studio and the innovative graphic work of Studio Look for the exhibition and the book. At the Jewish Museum, thank you to many colleagues from so many different departments for making this exhibition a reality. More names than I can list here. Julie McGuire, who I hope came this evening, deftly handled a complicated loan process and courier schedule, to say the least. Maureen Merrigan, who I see right there, who kept us on track with our benchmark deadlines, supporting us every step of the way. Michael Statford, Val Ognov, and the whole security team. I would be remiss not to acknowledge the heroic efforts of the entire installation team who worked tirelessly to install each work of art. Thank you to my colleagues in development, education, publications, and marketing for their critical support. You were all instrumental. My colleagues in the curatorial department cheered me on every step of the way. You were all amazing. Interns, staff, and volunteers, including one who is here today in this room, all of your contributions were much appreciated. And curatorial assistants Rebecca Frank and Serena Feingold, thank you. I found a curatorial partner on this project to embrace my vision. I did not do this alone. Michelle Frederick, who I'm trying to see, maybe you can raise her hand. I see her partner right there. Michelle Frederick, curator of European art and co-organizer, co-curator of this exhibition, who's here with us this evening. Thank you, Michelle, for trusting me with this concept, for being a sounding board and intellectual partner, and for the joy and humor you brought to the process. And it turns out pairing an observant Orthodox Jew and a Gentile to plan an exhibition in the Book of Esther could result in many moments of laughter and inspiration. And we hope maybe you can see some of those moments reflected in the show. Thank you to the North Carolina Museum of Art for their partnership, especially to Director and CEO Valerie Hillings and Chief Curator Linda Doherty. This exhibition will travel to the North Carolina Museum of Art this fall. We're also incredibly grateful for the collaboration of the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum, especially the director, Peggy Fulgeman, and curator of the collection, Diana Greenwald, both in supporting spectacular loans and for allowing us to bring this story to your unique museum and audience. Following its presentation in North Carolina, it will travel to the Gardner. We owe a debt of gratitude for the exhibition funders, thank you. And finally, thank you to the owners of these great works from around the world, some of whom are in this room this evening, from the Netherlands to New York, so that we can share the story of Queen Esther in Rembrandt's time with all of you. Just as Esther did for the people of her time, and for so many people in the 17th century, we hope this exhibition will bring light, joy, gladness, and honor, ora v'simcha v'sason v'yikar, to the Jewish people in the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Abigail. You know, I have to say a few things about Abigail. And they relate to what our mantra here in the Jewish Museum is now. And our motivating principle today is to look at Jewish culture not in isolation, elevated above other cultures, but rather always to look at the narrative of Jewish world culture in this global diaspora over 3,000 plus years, always resonating with other cultures around it. And to accomplish that, you need to understand not just what Jewish ceremonial art and Judaica are about, but you need to understand the powerful intersection between that story and European art history in particular. And Abigail fits the bill in this regard, really bringing to us the focus, the perspective, and the scholarship of someone who understands each of those subjects with a very, very important, and from a very, very important perspective. So we owe a round of applause to Abigail, and you need to know that her parents are here and her mother-in-law is here, so we hope you're as proud of her as we are. Okay, it's my pleasure now to ask Ahmed Dadou, who's the Consul General of the Netherlands in New York, to come and say a few words. As I said before, consulates really don't have the power to do a lot these days, except, of course, to carry forward the mission that they bring from wherever they come from to us here in the US. But Ahmed really extended himself with regard to loans and support in so many directions, and even with financial support for our project in a way that's been unique. So please, Ahmed.
Thank you, James. These are the kind of introductions that usually make me blush, actually, but it's really a pleasure to be here. Ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor to stand here in front of you in this remarkable museum as we open the book of Esther in the age of Rembrandt. Thank you to the Jewish Museum and Director James Snyder for hosting me tonight, and a real pleasure to finally meet you in person. It is so timely to have this opening in the days preceding the festival of Purim. And I'm joined here today by my colleague, Pauline Genee, who is, raise your hand, Pauline. She's the head of our cultural department at the consulate, and many of the credits that you just made explicit actually go to her and her team. Arts and culture are an integral part of our foreign policy. For obvious reasons, I would say. Art and culture not only bring people together, but also bring our common history to live through the innovative lenses that this exhibition shows. The Book of Esther exhibition is so much more than a display of extraordinary art and works. It's a testament of resilience, of cultural exchange, and the timeless power of storytelling. Queen Esther inspired some of the greatest Dutch artists, Rembrandt, Jan Steen, Aart de Gelder, who reimagined her world through the lens of their own time. In the 1600s, immigrant Jewish communities looking for freedom of religion moved to Amsterdam, and the story of Queen Esther traveled with them. Her bravery, an important symbol of freedom in their new lives. it became part of the cultural and intellectual environment in their new home. But the story resonated more widely, beyond the Jewish community. For the Dutch, Queen Esther's heroism against oppression also represented their own fights for freedom from the Spanish rule. And it was at that time, same period, that the Dutch just founded New Amsterdam, where we are today. In that little settlement on the island of Manhattan, Jewish people and people from many other denominations found freedom of religion that they were denied elsewhere. And that spirit of openness and cultural exchange is something we cherish today. That is foundational on both sides of the Atlantic. And that, to me, feels, to be honest, also deeply personal. I was born in Morocco, and I immigrated with my family to the Netherlands at the age of 9, not speaking a word of Dutch. Learning to adapt to a new culture and a new language is something that has shaped me in how I see the world around me, and it has also given me a very deep connection to the many others who have traveled abroad in search of new horizons. And standing here today, from an immigrant family, illiterate parents, and going through the Dutch system in less than a generation and being able to represent the Kingdom of the Netherlands here, standing here also shows me the power of art to bring people together. It helps us to see through each other's eyes and to remind us of our shared humanity. And this year, the Consulate marks 400 years of New York with our cultural program, Future 400. We started it last year, by the way. You might have heard of it. And we try to, in this program, to give space to the untold stories of connections between the Netherlands and New York. That, of course, includes the Lenape, the indigenous people of this region, enslaved people, Jewish life in Amsterdam and in New Amsterdam. In a time when the world can feel increasingly divided, exhibitions like this one are more important than ever. They encourage us to reflect not just on the past, but on what we can do to rebuild bridges and rebuild them again, and to stand up for what is right, and to create a more compassionate world. And I don't want to take more of your time, but I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for giving me this opportunity to finally also somehow find a home for a story that is deeply inside of me. And we spoke about this last week on the phone, and this evening is really a great testament to a great relationship. Thank you for the kind words, but if there is anything that we can do to help your story further, we're here. Thank you so much.
You know, Ahmed and I only met for the first time on the phone last week, and I learned almost immediately about his history as an immigrant. And I said to him, you know, if each of us reflects on his or her origins, we all know and need to know that we are all immigrants at some point in time in our histories. And it was very moving for the two of us. And I said, at first, Ahmed said, I don't want to say anything. And when he talked about this, I said, you have to speak, and you have to speak about this, because, of course, it has so much to do also with what this exhibition is about. So, in closing, I just want to say that you need to enjoy this exhibition. And it's not just that, okay, here at the Jewish Museum in New York, we have 3 Rembrandts at the moment. One, his stunning early depiction of Esther, and actually one, an early self-portrait, which is here from the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum, having left the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum for the first time since it was acquired there well over a century ago. And it's not just that, it's everything that Ahmed said, and you see all of Rembrandt's peers and the resonance in their work between each of them and among all of them, and the resonance between their works and the ceremonial objects and manuscripts and Esther scrolls that are together in the exhibition with them. It's really something. And as a final comment, as you walk around, you need to keep in mind Mordecai's words to Esther when he was bolstering her confidence to perform what she felt was going to be a foolish act, when he said to her, "But for such a time as this," and what she did thereafter was courageous, and it did save her people. And words like that only add to the power of presenting this exhibition here at our museum at this moment in time. So, thank you all for being here, and enjoy this exhibition.